Gentlemen, are we ready?
Yep.
Hold it on the mic. Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, December 13th. We'll call to order at 6:31 p.m. This meeting is being broadcast and all content is being recorded. First item of business for this evening, discussion regarding town response to COVID-19. Any updates?
Obviously, case counts have continued as much of the county and the state have experienced. So we're continuing to monitoring that with our nursing staff. And we've also just today become aware that there may be testing kits being sent to the town. The details are still not clear to us. So as we have more information this week, we'll make sure we notify you all and the Board of Health.
Excellent. I believe they're meeting to discuss this, among other things, in the next week or so.
Correct.
All right. Did I read the latest numbers that you just sent over that look like they've come down some? Or was that a daily count?
So they have transitioned to daily counts.
Okay.
So that was Saturday, Sunday, and today.
Is that still, so that's per day? Change? Is that how I read
No,
that?
those are just new unique counts that day. So it's not necessarily a change from the week before.
Okay.
Previously, you've been receiving a 2-week look back,
Right.
and now you're getting case counts daily.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a specific reason for that other than some towns, I think, wanted more granular data. And so the nursing team is trying to provide that level. We could easily, for comparison purposes, aggregate that again for you if you wanted a week-by-week comparison.
Are they going to continue to provide a week by week as well as the daily, or don't know?
This was the first week that I've experienced since they've made this change, and so as of today, I would have expected the week look back, and I didn't receive that. Instead, I got this Saturday, Sunday, Monday count. I will ask that question.
Okay. I don't know what the two of you feel, but the day-to-day, it doesn't give us a good change from week to week in my mind of like how it's progressing.
Yeah, I was a little confused just even looking at that sheet because I wasn't sure if that's the count on two separate dates. So if I read that correctly, there's 15, right?
So it looked like you had 2 new cases on
And 2 cases
on Saturday.
influenza.
This is the prior weekly.
Correct. Okay, yes.
Okay.
So it's showing 6 and 9, and that's transitioning from 6 to 9
Correct.
total,
Correct.
not 15.
Not nine new.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Now I'm getting myself. Now I'm getting myself
Would you
confused.
pass that back to Brian?
Let me just see this
The way I read
document real
it was
quick.
It was now up to 9, which is a change of 3 from the previous week.
That's what I believe too, but I'm not positive.
No, these are new cases, so that your interpretation is correct. So
Okay.
in that 2-week look, there was 6 in one week, there was 9 in the following week. So that would have been for that 2-week look back of 15. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they're only counting new cases in that. You had previously seen reports of how many ongoing cases because this can last from 10 to 14 days depending on the scenario. So they're not giving you that level of how much they're looking back in terms of those isolation or quarantine cases. Close contacts, all of that is happening behind the scenes, but those are positive counts.
Okay. Yeah, I think there was some other data we used to see that was 2-week range
Yeah.
data, and it was
Correct.
comparables, not just new.
Correct.
It was how many this 2 weeks versus how many that 2 weeks. And so this summary is how many new each week.
Right.
And now they've gone to how many new daily, is what you
Correct.
just said.
Correct.
Okay.
New daily is fine as long as we can still have a look back on comparables to see
Okay.
where we're trending. Because if the number keeps saying, the sheet looks like 1 every week, and you're like, oh, 1, that's great.
Right.
And the number in reality is 1 new, which means it could be 7 or 8, 9
Okay.
cases by a week and a half from now. That's different.
Right.
Okay.
Having the aggregate of the total in town is
Okay.
needed.
We will work with the nursing staff when we talk to them Wednesday about how we can get that for you.
Thank you.
Anything else on COVID-19 at the moment?
Just a reminder on the VAX bus is in town tomorrow between 2 and 6, Fire Station 2.
Excellent. Any updates, discussion regarding July 18th, 2021 state of emergency?
None today?
No updates today. No updates on the library construction project or change orders?
I've reached back out to our team to say that we're looking for the updates for this month because we want to close these issues out, and I'm just waiting on the response.
Okay.
I noticed
Jackie?
the flagpole light is out. It's the same one that we've already replaced.
Yep, we've got it on the list.
The discussion regarding traffic control in Irving Center impacted by Church Street Bridge. We don't have any specific updates at this point, correct?
No, I need to get you the cost estimate on what temporary traffic control systems would cost you, and I also need to get you a cost and what an engineering proposal to do that study would cost you. So I'm working on those two things.
Okay. Have we had any discussion with Mass DOT regarding plowing?
I have one more follow-up
Exemption?
to do with them.
Okay.
That was my next question.
Okay.
Beat me to it.
Any others?
They needed a few additional piece of information which Glenn retrieved for us, and I just need to complete that loop.
Regarding the vehicle and such?
Correct. They wanted to understand what plowing truck we were going to be using on there to make their final response back to you all.
Okay. Any others?
No.
Nothing.
No Arch Street Force Main sewer change orders at this point.
Not today.
I'll request that we pass over the surplus property request, third read. We'll come back to that in January. We'll jump down to issuance of cemetery deeds, number 557 through 559, Costello.
Should be in your packets. Pull that up.
Any concerns?
I have no concerns. I don't see that on my screen, so am I in the wrong place?
Section 11?
Is it
Oh, no.
in?
Too far. Yes, section 11.
Yep.
So I'm in the wrong place, so where are you guys?
Do you
at?
have the packet open?
No. Oh, okay, the original? The
Yeah,
packet that was sent to
Brian.
us?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
This is helpful, sir.
thank you.
While Bill's pulling that up, I'll make a motion that we issue deed number 557 for lot 1281, deed 558 for lot 1282. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me start over. Make a
Different people.
yeah. Make a motion we issue deed number 557, lot number 1281 to Thomas Costello of 50 North Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion we issue deed number 558, lot number 1282 to Evelyn Costello, 50 North Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Make a motion we issue deed number 559, lot 1283 to Edwin Costello, 50 North Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Issuance of Ursuco Industrial Treatment Program Permit.
So this is your permit that you issue every 5 years. Irving Industries is reapplying for the discharge permit. Pete Sanders has reviewed the application. So the application and a draft permit were both in your packets. Nothing substantial is changing your permit other than we do have this new additional PFAS requirement, and I think you saw a mention of that in the memorandum from Irving Industries. So it's still new to all of us about how we're going to work that into the provisions of the permit, but the permit does tie back to the NEPD's requirements on POTW number 2. So the two documents are intertwined. So obviously Pete's here today if you're looking for any information about the review of the permit. It is for a period effective starting in March. So it's required under the permit to apply at least 3 months in advance. So they've met that requirement. And it's up to the three of you if we're ready to proceed.
Okay. Any questions regarding the permit or questions for Superintendent Sanders?
Yeah, my question was gonna be directed towards Superintendent. Any concerns? I read through it, it seems very similar to the ones we've had in the past, but a lot of that terminology in there goes above my head, and I like to reach out to those that are doing that professionally.
Yes, I have no concerns with the permit. The only thing added in would be the PFAS testing when that comes about. And that's all under that piece of permit anyways.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Bill, any
I have no
questions
concern.
or concerns? Okay.
Is this something that you all feel like you would want to issue today, or do you want more time with it?
I have no problem issuing it today. Get it off the docket.
Yeah, I have no concerns. Bill?
None.
All right, let's pull this back up. One second.
I think it's section,
0317.
Is that the
Permit
same
number?
reference, Brian? The same wastewater discharge permit number, or is it a new number?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make
Because it
sure.
references a NIPD's permit number, a different number.
I'm
if you
thinking
go
that's their
to
old permit number,
section 12B.
0317.
if you go to section 12B, it should have draft.
322, yeah.
Yep, 322 should be your new permit number with effective date of March 5th, 2022.
Oh, there it is.
So they all look the same.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the wastewater discharge permit number 03-22, effective date of March 5th, 2022, and expiration date of March 4th, 2027, to Irving Industries Incorporated, 97 East Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next item of business, issuance of the 9th and 10th water commitment for FY '22.
Section 13.
Yep.
Yep.
A1 and A2. Make a motion to approve the 9th water commitment FY '22 in the amount of, give me 1 second, $1,044.94 for new service. 24 French King Highway.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the 10th water commitment in the amount of $1,098.20. 3 Central Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Issuance of calendar year 2022 business and liquor licenses.
should be a list in your packets of your liquor license renewals as well as your business license renewals. And I tried to prepare it in a manner that I recall last year you issuing them by license category with the business name, the location, and the classification of license. They all have the same effective date and expiration dates, so if that helps with your motion.
Do we have any questions or concerns about any of the liquor licenses listed? These are all renewals, correct?
All of them are renewals,
Same type?
correct?
Franklin Groceries, that says 1 West Main Street, where is that?
That's to say 1 West High Street. Thank you for catching that.
Okay.
Good catch. Is this all of the current licenses of this category?
Yes. This is all of your applicants.
If there are no concerns, I'll give a pass at a motion.
Yeah.
You have a question? What's the
Apologies,
process?
just questions?
Yes, I'm just wondering why the Crooked Tap is being issued a liquor license and then been closed for 2 years, and they're not on the market anymore? It's just, they're just living in it, why they are being issued a liquor license? It's not an active business and hasn't been for a number of years.
I'll take a start at that, and my fellow board members have thoughts, but it's a commercial property that was a business. They still have a current liquor license and wish to renew it. I would assume if they put the property back on the market that they wish to market it with that license as the type of establishment that used to be housed there. At least that's what I considered when we saw it on the list, and that they had requested the renewal. I don't know if the other board members have any thoughts.
They took it off the market, so it's no longer being actively marketed. So I understand why they were one last year, but they're just living in it as residential. And it's not being taxed as a commercial entity because they're living in it and not doing commercial business. I think the quote was, their living room is now their fancy tap room. So I'm just wondering why we would be issuing a liquor license for them if they're not doing business. And it's not being marketed.
So when I saw that, it raised the same question to me, but my understanding was, and I don't know if it's correct, is I always thought the liquor license was owned once it was given to a particular business with a name, that those individuals then owned the license, then it was up to them to decide when to terminate it, or when they sold it, it went with the property. They could sell it with the property as well. So I don't know if that's correct, if I am correct in that.
So,
And I guess the other question it raises for me as well is if it's true that they probably should not have that license as it stands, as you're indicating, then how does that affect, how many licenses do we have for the town of Irving? If someone comes forward and they want to attain a liquor license, are we already at our limit with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And that raises that question for me as well. So does the fact that they have a license that they're not using, does that affect future licenses?
answer? I'll do my best. I think what you're referring to in regards to licensing that used to be tied to deeds is not a factor in this case.
Okay.
And so that is an older model of liquor licensing. The decision to issue a liquor license or to not is resolved to the three of you as the licensing authority. We have checked with the ABCC about whether or not we can issue this license if they're not currently open to business, and that is solely a decision the three of you make. To the principal assessor's point, if the tax departments are aware of a change in use to the property that the rest of us are not aware of, I think that would be helpful information to know about, because that's news to me, that the business is not currently being marketed, or that the commercial space is no longer a commercial space. So that it would be new information. And in terms of the number of liquor licenses, you actually have 14 all pouring licenses, you issue 3. So you still have 11 additional licenses. So there is no impact at this time if you chose to reissue this license.
Just to clarify, the innkeeper is an all pouring as well, is that the third?
Yes, it's a bit of a,
Yeah,
it's
but
a middle
that's the one that
space.
fits within the 14, the third
Correct.
one? Okay.
Correct.
Sorry.
No, that's fine, I was just clearing my throat. So the only thing I was gonna say is, if the factor of whether or not we have enough licenses to issue is no longer a problem,
Correct.
if they want to keep their license, that's fine. However, the assessor's office should know that they're obtaining a license as a commercial business. Obtaining that, therefore, puts them in a commercial standing. Whether they choose to or not, that's on them. But if they're choosing to renew a license to have the benefits of being able to reopen at any minute, then they are in fact saying they're a commercial business. Whether or not they choose to put their couch in their tap room or not, that's on them. But by asking for the license, they're asking to be a commercial entity. So, the assessor's office can reach out to them afterwards and let them know that they're back on the roll as a commercial business.
It just impacts the personal property, which we haven't been taxing because
Correct.
they basically told me they weren't doing business and that they had turned it into residential. But if they're gonna get the liquor license, then to be treated fair like everyone else.
Yeah.
So that was gonna be taxed at the commercial.
And so I guess my question would be is if we issue it to them this evening, your office could reach out to them and let them know that they would have to make the decision of whether or not they want to continue with that license or rescind that request and let it go. And
I can do that.
and leave it as status quo the way it is as a residential property only.
That brings a question to me. Did they have an active business license, do they not?
So they have not renewed their food permit with us, but my understanding is they have a business certification with the town clerk's office.
So I believe their business, and it's just a point of clarification because I wouldn't expect us to issue a liquor license to a non-business.
Correct.
So if their business is still valid with the town clerk, then I don't have a concern, assuming we go through that process. But being that they are an active business with the town's clerk's office, then issuing a license makes sense. If
They were not on the active business license list that I was given for fiscal 2021, or 22 that we just set the tax rate for, which is why I was surprised to see the liquor license application, because they weren't listed as an active business.
when
So I'm just saying, perhaps we just need to look into it a little bit more, that's all.
when you say the business license list, I'm looking at a list that we're reviewing tonight. I assume that is not the same list you got?
That is not the same
Okay,
list. I get
perfect.
a list from Betsy C-Card that lists all the active businesses.
Okay.
Some that have a 4-year license, some that get the yearly license. That's what we base our personal property form of lists that we send out to. So
Okay.
we look at that list yearly.
At this point, I think I'm leaning, if the board agrees, on holding off on renewing that one, pending understanding if the business license is active and if they wish to continue knowing that change in assessment and other things that affects.
Sure, we can
And-
put them on the first meeting in January.
Yeah, and being they're not operating, it shouldn't cause any harm for them of business continuity since they're not open for business.
Correct.
Right?
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
You have a thought or a
My
concern?
thought is if we need to renew their license, because it will expire, and you haven't done that, I don't know if we can easily just
Reissue.
reissue. So I wonder if an alternative to address the concern the three of you have is to extend it with a shorter time frame so that you can revisit it on January 3rd.
We could change the expiration date.
If you were to make
I'll
it,
make a motion that we issue a liquor license restaurant all alcohol to the Crooked Tap of 7 West Main Street, effective January 1st, 2022, expiring February 1st, 2022.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
in the meantime, I will get you that information.
thank you. That's one. Good points, thank you. The balance of them, any concerns in the liquor license category?
I have no concerns.
All right, I'll take a stab at the motion. Make a motion, we renew the following liquor licenses effective January 1st, 2022, expiring December 31st, 2022. Fliss Market, 5 West Main Street, liquor license retail package store. French King Bowling Center, 55 French King Highway, liquor license restaurant all alcohol. Franklin Grocery, 1 High Street, liquor license, 1 West High Street, liquor license retail package store. French King Motor Inn, 129 French King Highway, liquor license innkeeper. And Weatherheads, 63 French King Highway, liquor license retail package store.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving to the business licenses. Any questions or concerns with regards to that list? Again, these are all renewals.
Correct.
Are there any that have not submitted a renewal who are active?
I went back through the list twice on Friday, and I'm pretty sure everybody who was on last year's list has renewed.
Okay.
You want a break from it?
If you would, sure, sure.
Sure. I will make a motion to issue the following business licenses with the effective dates of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. Accurate Automotive Services Incorporated, 21 Leicester Street, Class 2 Auto Repair and Retail. Dunkin' Donuts, 63 French King Highway. Common Victulars, Irving Equipment, 38 French King Highway, Class 2 Used Vehicle Retail. Fliss Market, 5 West Main Street. Common Victualers. Freight House, 11 East Main Street. Common Victualers. French King Bowling Center, 55 French King Highway. Common Victualers. French King Bowling Center, 55 French King Highway. Automatic Amusement Devices. French King Restaurant, 127 French King Highway. Common Victualers. Greenfield Automotive, 38 French King Highway, Auto Repair. Rose Ledge Companies, 21 Poplar Mountain, there's 2 of them, Class 2 Auto Repair, Retail, and a Class 3 Buy-Sell Vehicle Parts. Stoneville Auto, 64 East Main Street, 2 of them, Class 2 Auto Repair and Retail, Class 3 Buy and Sell Vehicle Parts, and the last is Tim's RV, 15 East Main Street, 2 of them, Class 2 Auto Repair and Retail, Class 1 Agent of Vehicle Manufacturer.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I hope I got them all right.
I followed along, they look good to me.
Okay.
With that, thank you. With that, it is 7 p.m., so I will call our joint meeting with the Finance Committee to review the FY 2023 operating budget requests to order. Welcome, FinCom. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we will, let me grab my budget book here. We'll go in order of the agenda. Same process we've had for the last couple of years. So we'll run through just kind of an overview of the current year, the coming year, challenges and opportunities, and any significant budget changes of note. And I believe first up is the select board budget. Which begins on section 2.3. Thank you, Brian, for putting together a good overview here. Would you mind speaking to some of the highlights, or would you like me to take that? Thank you, sir.
I'll do my best to do that in minutes. So
High level.
just make sure I make this one note. Okay. So without any surprise, COVID-19 was a major factor for FY22. So we've been working with the various departments on their reopening plans and managing as each of the developments have happened regarding variants or mask mandates in other communities, trying to figure out how we're going to approach our reopening plans. And with few exceptions, we've been able to work through any exposures that have occurred in any of our town facilities and work with staff and patrons to keep facilities open. So a huge thank you to everybody there, but that's been quite a significant part of our work. We're starting to process out the funding that came in last year for all of those resources that came through the COVID-19 funds, the CARES Act. And then, as you all recall, around July, you started to receive the ARPA funds that are now part of the next response to the economy and the impacts of COVID-19. And we've been using that on infrastructure. So we've been working with many of the other departments on their infrastructure projects, which are coming to a substantial completion point and a pause until the spring when they will tidy up. So I think with all of those projects sort of taking a pause, our big focus right now is to take stock of everything that has been worked on over the last year, revisit that priority list with all the department heads. You have the 80-something projects on the list that we need to revise, update with what's been completed, identify what your priorities are for the coming year, and start to strategize how we're going to fund those projects and how they work in the overall strategy for the town. So I think our office is going to really focus on that. In terms of budget increases, there's budget increases for staff and wages and some slight increases requested for personnel for specifically the training and seminar section, as well as advertising. We've been doing a lot of recruitment over the last year, and I don't see that necessarily stopping, and the cost of those advertising requirements are much higher than they were in previous years. That's the high level.
Being that we continue to need to hire for a variety of reasons, and the year is not over, the current fiscal year, is that enough of an increase, do you think, for that? I know we don't have a crystal ball, but
Right.
just and hopefully we don't need it because we have less turnover and less change, but
Right. It depends. Just one or two classified ads, depending on the length of the ad, itself can run about $500. So, that the budget request covers about 3 to 4 hirings, depending on specific requests. If it's a higher level department or executive level, we try to cast a wider net, maybe statewide. So we use MMA or one of those other paid subscription services. If it's something more local, we just rely on local papers for that. Social media is always free, and we include that with all of our searches. So you're right, it's an estimate.
I only ask because we're almost double right now, which is about what we have on our request,
Right.
and we're halfway, and we know we have more coming. So,
Correct.
Hopefully FY23 will not have as many, but I'm just putting it out there for food for thought. Any questions from the rest of the board with the numbers? Any questions from the FinCom regarding the budget proposal? Okay, none appearing. We'll move forward. Thank you, Brian. And then we have the Finance Committee and Reserve Fund. And we put these in at level funded from last year. Any changes requested? Good with that? Okay.
Can I put one question in front of both boards?
Please?
Just a consideration. Other agencies who do frequent grant applications have contemplated and some have implemented a grant match reserve fund. So if you are working on an application that comes up throughout the year, but to apply for it, you must have some funds available to commit. So Mariah and I have been talking about this reality that these grant applications, some of them are cyclical and we know to anticipate them every year, and other times you become aware of something that just comes to you throughout the fiscal year and it's too late to go back and you're looking through your budget trying to identify a potential match or an in-kind. So we just thought we would float the suggestion for later consideration that maybe a match account that would sit under the FinCom's control. So if an application comes forward, an opportunity presents itself, and both boards thought it was worthy of applying for, you may have a source.
Do you have an idea of what you'd like to see in that account, dollar-wise?
I think we had talked about $10,000, just as something to work with.
Are you thinking about rolling it into the current account or having a separate account of 10,000?
I wondered the same thing. I think as a staff and as an organization, I think we've come to think of the current reserve fund as this all other emergency type need that arises. And I think you all have been really responsive to those needs when they arise. So I think it would be hard to then hold that money aside for something else. So I wondered if you're even interested in this idea, we consider it as a separate line item, but then that same category. It's another reserve fund, sits under the FinCom, and it just has that specified purpose. It's meant for matching for opportunities that arise throughout the year.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question? To date, do you have an idea on the cost, in-kind cost for any of the grants that we've applied for? Can you give us some figures?
At this moment, all of the grants that you've received so far this year have either been ones that did not require a match. For instance, MassWorks that you're working on, well, that came in the earlier year, but we're spending it now. You did appropriate additional funds for some work associated with that out of the ARPA funds that came, but that wasn't a requirement. You then received all of the ARPA funds that we've been spending. So most of the grants that you've received in the last few months have not required that. You talked about the site readiness grant that you may choose to accept. Again, that hasn't come with a match requirement, but usually you've already put some effort into this because you're being proactive on these projects that if we had to, we could try to articulate some of that. I do know that Mariah is exploring one potential grant opportunity that's due in February, which does request a match, and they're looking for something in the ballpark of 20%. So the exact dollar amount is a little fluid. As you design the project, you then can work backwards into what the match is, and then you can put staff time towards that. So the actual dollar amount may not be as high if you can allocate enough staff resources towards it. I don't think I have a perfect number for it. It wouldn't obviously cover more than really one grant application a year, even if you did it.
Okay.
I mean, if you're applying for something like $100,000 and they want a 20% match, you're talking somewhere in the ballpark of $20,000 to $25,000 that you would be trying to match with in-kind and/or cash.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Brian.
yeah.
It seems to me that establishing that line is a great idea. If we can take a small amount of our money and leverage a lot of money from somebody else, which may have been money we paid in anyways, to get our own money back, I think it's a great idea to have that mechanism in place. And 10,000 doesn't give you a lot of leverage, 25 might give you a little more, but I have no idea what grants people might apply for.
Right.
But at least establishing the line at some level, I think is a great idea, so we have an opportunity to get more stuff in here for taxpayers, using somebody else's money.
Is that a motion, Mr. Hammack?
Just a thought, so I need support. If you think 10,000 is enough, fine. If you think a little more would open up for bigger amounts to us, I would not be disagreeable to that, from my point of view.
I just had a couple thoughts. I agree with you, and I think could we ask Mariah, and I know she's in the audience, but and you, Brian, to look at the grants over the last, maybe 18 months, 24 months. What does a match look like when it was required? Whether we've already funded, obviously we've already funded those, but I kind of agree. I don't feel like 10,000 maybe gets us there, and then if we're going to a special town meeting potentially to ask for more funds anyway, did it really serve its purpose? And if it's time sensitive, maybe we aren't able to apply. So maybe that helps us determine what a number could be. That makes more sense to consider. I also think the last 24 months has been unique, or 18 months, in the number of opportunities that have popped up because of the pandemic, because of all the other challenges that the state and the country have faced. But they seem to be continuing, so I do think we should do what we can to continue to seize the opportunities where they exist.
Could I move that the finance committee supports developing the line item amount to be determined later? Just on record as support or not?
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
So we'll look to develop that further as we get into more, for future budget meetings. We can try to hone in on what that number should be and get that done.
Yeah, we can do that for you. Thank you all.
And see where it fits in the overall budget. Anything else? Is that it on that one? Okay. Next budget for review is the accountant's budget. The accountant is not with us tonight. There's really little change in the budget. Primarily the only change is in wages and software support, which I assume is just estimated increase.
It's the annual increase for the software company.
Understood. Any questions or concerns?
None.
Okay.
Can I just note one thing? Sorry.
Yes, you may.
Sorry. Just real quick. That is the annual increase for our existing financial package. This is the package that the accountant's office, the treasurer's office, and my office share. This is as it exists. We had migrated it to their hosting service, but it's not cloud-based. If we were interested in looking at a cloud-based version of this, that would be a different cost. So I just wanted to point that out for distinction. We don't currently have plans to transition, but if that's something you wanted us to explore in FY23, this is just to do the on-premise version that we have today.
The remote hosted version that we have today.
Thank you. That's
It's not cloud per se, but it is not local either.
correct.
Just to be clear.
Correct.
Okay. Is that the Springbrook platform?
Correct.
Okay. Anything that we're focused on considering next year at this point, or requesting that the accountant and the team look into?
I have none.
I would lean on them. If it's something that they feel they need to push forward for 23, then let's get the numbers. Otherwise, we can wait for 24.
We can ask the treasurer when she's up here shortly too for her thoughts. Okay, moving on to the assessors.
I can wait until IT and then I can do them both together, or?
If you want to come and do both, we'll just do assessors and then jump to IT. All right.
Could I have the record show that I'm recused from the finance committee, so there's no conflict being the assessor of finance in this discussion?
I believe has been noted. Thank you.
So our highlights and the challenges for 22 was that it was a recertification year. And sales have been off the charts. So to minimize the impact on the taxpayer, we elected to use the 19 and 20 sales, and even with that, the average values increased about 4% overall. Also, another requirement is our appraisal for the hydroelectric facility, which resulted in a $19 million loss of value. But we were able to offset some of that loss with increases in the residential, solar, and electric utility values. So overall, our EQV went down $7,732,393, or just under 0.8%. And this did cause the tax rate to raise. The goals and initiatives for '23 we are looking to upgrade our 20-year-old assessing software to Assess Pro 5 in October and November of this coming year, or a little earlier if I can get Patriots to work with it. We had been planning on upgrading the current fiscal year, but deferred it at the request of the DOR because they didn't want us to do a conversion during a recertification year. The money that we've requested in the capital budget, it would replace the existing server because unfortunately Assess Pro or any mass appraisal software has not made it up to the cloud yet, although they are being pushed at a rapid rate all over, so I think it will happen soon. The other pressing matter is the upcoming retirement of myself. I have given the assessors a retirement date of December of 2024, which is 2 years away. However, there is a shortage of qualified assessors in my field. There's a shortage in a number of municipal positions, but it's the wave. A lot of longtime assessors have retired. Nobody goes to school to be an assessor. Sometimes you're an appraiser and you come over to the municipal side, or you fall into it like I did 23 years ago and you stay. What we would like to do, and that is really the only increase in the budget, is we would like to hire someone in January of 2024, which is the second half of fiscal 2023, and teach them as much as possible in the year that I have left. And that's really the only increase. This is a one-person office, but in Irving, we do everything in-house. And we don't hire outside help at all, except during recertification years, which occur every 5 years for the commercial and industrial statistical parts that I just don't really want to mess with the Department of Revenue. And we outsource our appraisal of the hydroelectric facility. But I oversee that bidding process with Brian and work closely with the appraiser who's working on it. That's not something that you're going to find hiring. So it's something we're just going to have to teach them on that. And so the assessors and I have gone back and forth on it. It seems a bit excessive to say train somebody for a full year, but the reality is that we're probably going to get someone who might have a little municipal experience, but might not know anything about assessing. And what we do is it's very cyclical. So, I might only do something once a year in January, February, March, and not do it again until the next January, February, March. And if we wait to hire somebody, I'd rather miss that opportunity to teach them how it's actually supposed to go. The other thing is, if we wait, we're going to be in the midst of setting the tax rate, and I'm not going to have a lot of time to teach somebody all the basics of running the office and doing it when I'm trying to set the tax rate. The other thing that we do is we do all our property inspections in-house, which means it's going out to the field and measuring the house and figuring out the style and measuring the garage and figuring out if it's a hip roof, it's a gable roof, all of these things that I don't really think about, but I started thinking about 6 months ago when I realized that I was going to get ready to retire, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of components to this job that I don't do every day, but as a whole, they make up to it. So that is the biggest increase on the budget, is to hire someone for the second half of fiscal 2023 and to teach them to replace me. Questions?
I guess I'll start. And I don't know if this would be directed at you as the current principal assessor, or Mr. Hammock is one of our assessors who's here as well in multiple hats. I noticed it's an assistant assessor. Obviously, you were an assistant assessor and became a principal assessor while you're here. The reason to start with an assistant, is that just because of the lack of likelihood to hire someone at that higher level out of the gate?
You can't be a principal assessor without receiving your designation from the Massachusetts Assessors Association. At a minimum, that's a 2-year process. That's if somebody fast-tracked and took all 6 courses as quickly as they were offered and was willing to travel all over the state. Course 101 or 100's online, but 200 is in a classroom setting. Then you have your sales approach, your cost approach, your income approach. You have your mass appraisal course, and then you also have a 15-hour use PEP course you have to take, and now you also have an assessment course that you have to take on top of it, is course 6. So there are not many assessors in the Pioneer and Berkshire area that have their MAA designation. Most of the people that work, they're assistant assessors. They're not principal assessors. So if you want to continue the services that you have, this is a solution that would work for now. And then hopefully the person that you hired would go on and receive their accreditation within a 3-year period. I've been racking my brain thinking, who might take my job, blah, blah, blah. And the reality is we're all the same age, and we're all getting ready to retire in the next 2 to 4 years. We're all at that wave. We all came in together, and we're all getting ready to get out together. So there just isn't a lot. And what a few smaller communities have done is they've outsourced it, which is very expensive. There is a company that will become me, and it's RRG is the name of it, but I happen to know that that's the route Wendell went, and they're paying about $35,000 a year, not to have anybody in the office, just for them to do all the work remotely. And that's not what you have traditionally had in Irving. So the assessor's office works very closely with the tax collector and the treasurer's office, very closely with the select board when needed. And one of the things that we do in-house that's very unusual is we print our own bills. So we have the ability that when the tax rate is set, we can put the bills out within a day, within 24 hours, because we do it all in-house. We transfer the data, we upload it to Vadar, and then we print the bills and we mail them out. That's not something you're going to get if it gets outsourced.
Thank you. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I like the idea of training somebody. We've talked several times about the services that we offer in town, and we try and offer premium services. We have the capacity to do so in all departments. And this train of thought out of the assessor's office budget is in line with that. And it looks at, saying, what are we currently offering and can we keep that? And then, Jackie had just mentioned that. So I'm in favor of something like that. And I haven't weighed heavily on one way or the other, but I'd be in favor of a training period for somebody for that position.
Now, I will tell you, I have a bunch of accumulated time. And so my thought was that once the person was getting more comfortable, I would take a day off and let them work independently. This job requires someone to be able to work independently. And so it kind of would be a test run for them, give them a little more confidence, and then I would use up my accumulated time.
Sounds like a lot for the assessors and yourself to sort through in the next couple years. So
I would comment as an assessor that getting into the office, until you get into the office, you don't realize how complex the situation is, how much the state requires that you do. Most people just see there's a sign on the door that says assessors and they get their tax bill. Other than that, they really don't know what they do. And almost everything that Jackie does is required by the state. And it's very complex, and you just keep sending it to them, say, do you approve of this? They either say yes or no. If they say no, you jigger it around, say, well, how about this? You gotta satisfy the state. And it's just very complex to get it done right. So we're, look for Jackie to stay on for another 2 years, I'll be too young. And hiring somebody that knows what they're doing right out of the gate just doesn't look like a real likely thing to happen. So having the funds to train somebody so we don't have a whole raft of problems with the state, easier to avoid them than to fix them.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, I don't know what the labor market will be in 12 months, but if it's anything like it is today, and this is more unique than maybe the private sector, it's a challenge everywhere, so.
Yeah. The other thought I had was, 12 months from now, like you said, the labor field might be vastly different, but maybe being open to part-time, if somebody were to come in just for the training purposes, have some funds available for the second half of the year, but if those could stretch out further, if maybe we have an applicant that says, I can't come in, 40 hours a week, but I do want the position,
Well, I work 25 hours a week, so so that is the other thing. It's only 3 days a week, so it even cuts down a little bit on the training time. And yes, I mean, I think we would be willing to work, if they found the right qualified candidate when they did the job search, we certainly would be amenable to working with that person if they wouldn't come on board right away. It's just hard to say, okay, I have, a couple months to train you. You have to learn all these things in that time period. And, when I go, there isn't anybody else to ask how you, I know you showed me how to do that, but I don't remember how to get it started. Also, we have software. We do Assess Pro. We run Vadar with the tax collector. That's where our motor vehicle excise bills are issued. There's a lot of little components that you don't really think about. And I'll be honest, I hadn't really been thinking about them until recently. And I was like, oh, wow. So, yeah. So there's just a bunch of little steps. And I'm going to try to start documenting the processes, too. I don't do that now. I've been doing it long enough. I don't think about it. But now I'm going to start writing it down for the just in case.
Good on the assessor's budget?
Yep.
Okay.
I did have two warrant
Thank you.
articles. One was the continuing appropriation for the defense of the valuation of the properties. This is our legal expense. We are asking $25,000 to put in. This is a continuing appropriation. We currently have a balance of $91,000. However, we are most hopeful that we will have our ATP case against the Northfield Mountain LLC be presented in March or April of this year, pending COVID. There has been we want, both lawyers want it in person, and the ATP has not been open to the public yet. I do expect our legal expenses to be rather high for that, especially if I have to spend a week in Boston for the case, et cetera, so that's the reason to add the supplemental for that. The other one is $35,000 for the continuing appropriation of the revaluation work. We currently have a balance of $73,736 in that. However, we're obligated to hire outside consultants for the valuation of our 504 utilities, which is Eversource, National Grid, on a yearly basis. That's been a recent change that the DOR has brought down. And we are currently in a second and third year contract for them, and that's an annual expense of $5,750. Additionally, the assessors have decided that it would be in the town's best interest to have Northfield Mountain Hydro value looked at yearly. Historically, we had only looked at it every 3 years. However, under the law, under Mass General Law, we are mandated to look at all values every year. We have to do a sales analysis. We have to do an interim adjustment. We need to treat everybody fair and equitably, and that means looking at the hydro yearly as well. We have a quote of $35,000 for 23, 24, and 25 from the consultant federal appraisals that did the 22. appraisal, and that was in the IFB, so we will be able to extend that contract, and we won't have to go out to bid. So those are the only two other things related to assessors.
Could I mention this, somebody might not know, ATB is the Appellate
Oh.
Tax Board, and we don't initiate those appeals. We only respond to those people who appeal, whatever the value is. There's a lot at stake when say, the mountain project appeals and anybody else.
Yeah, we have three pending cases. We have a pending ATB case with Eversource Utilities. All over the state, they have appealed their values, and Renovator Supply, as well as Northfield Mountain.
The thing is, it seems like a lot of money. You can send me down there for free, but you get what you pay for. And we need to have, competent legal advice. I think Bill went down there with us once. And it's an appointed board of three.
Yes.
And it just behooves the town to spend whatever it takes to get it right, so that everybody is treated fair and equal. And there are those people, some who would like to be treated less equal than everybody else. So we just want to get it right. That's why there are tens of thousands of dollars what's being requested.
Questions or concerns on the additional articles?
None.
None appearing. Okay. Thank you, Jackie. You want to move on to IT?
Yes.
We'll jump right
okay.
into IT.
All right, so the accomplishments this year included the efforts of getting the town of Irving staff trained to use the cloud-based Office 365 and to migrate almost 90% of the town's files to the cloud-based software, the exception being the assessor's office. We finished the wireless network build-out and the computer upgrade at the town hall, the senior center, and the library. We still have to start and complete the upgrade to the police station, the Department of Public Works, and both fire stations. And we worked with Comcast and the Berniston Northfield Community Television to be able to live stream and record the select board's meetings. And it's the intent to also stream and record the school committee meetings in any town meeting. So that's what we're working on. The fiscal 23 goals and initiatives is, our goal is to complete the build out of the wireless network and upgrade any remaining obsolete computers at the police station, the fire station, the Department of Public Works. And we do have an issue with printer connectivity, and we're trying to figure out how to fix that. And I did go into more detail on that. I don't want to take up too much of your time. The other goal is to work towards a security training with elected officials and town staff to have a more secure digital environment. We want the elected officials and staff to understand and recognize phishing, scams, and viruses, and how they are always changing to mimic the work environment so the town of Irving doesn't become one of the victims of cybercrime. We just recently had a little bit of phishing going on. Scott, I think that they took the names of the selectmen and started passing them around, and it just goes to show that we always have to be alert, and we have to teach everyone how not to just click and how to really look at it, and does it seem off, and just to be a little more careful and concerned about it, and to use our town email and not their private emails. That's really the first step to minimizing any security breach. The educational component is really something that we need to work on. Significant budget changes. We reduced the town website line item and increased the copier maintenance line item because now we have the library, police, fire station, and town hall on the copier, which we didn't before. They were taking care of their own, but now it's all into the IT budget. And we increased the IT support telephone line as well for anything that might come up related to our telephone system, which we currently have with Comcast Business Voice. Overall, there was no increase. They just shifted the funds within. And I didn't count any kind of COLA or anything that's not in there. Any question?
Jackie, has the town looked at software for phishing? I know that we just purchase Hampshire mobile phone, which is, they'll set up phishing schemes based off of emails that you receive, and it'll tell you whether you were trying to buy it or not. It'll show you which pieces were wrong that you should look at.
Oh,
And it'll also say you have to go back to remedial phishing school. And if you fail, and tell you to go through it, watch a 15-minute exercise.
I mean, it is, they are getting pretty sophisticated. I mean, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
so if you could pass that along, that would be great. We could certainly look into that. I know that is one of the goals for next year, for us to, you know, really work on that educational component of it. Is there anything else?
Any other questions?
None.
Before? Okay.
No.
Thank you, Jackie. Make a few little adjustments here, and then we'll bring the treasurer up next.
I have to say, I really appreciate the lack of the really big screen that we had last time. It's a lot less intimidating.
Don't worry, you're on the big screen somewhere else.
Somebody at their house has you on the big screen.
It is not bad not to see it on a 40, 50, 60 inch while you're in the middle of lively talking, right? Understood and agreed. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, and
All
I'll
right.
let you take it away.
Sounds good. Highlights and challenges. After having a year and a half under my belt, I feel like I'm, you know, my head's above water now, and feel like we've gotten into the processes quite well. Definitely have to thank our assistant Jean for all of her knowledge, and she's been nothing but an asset to the department. Something I didn't add in here was our borrowing this year. We borrowed $1.5 million for the sewer project. So we have done a little bit of short-term borrowing, and we are now going to be looking to long-term borrowing now that the project is almost underway. So we'll be meeting with actually David Eisenthal tomorrow to discuss that. So that we're looking towards March to go ahead and do that long-term borrowing. Goals and initiatives for this year. Our office plans to create some policies, a hiring process and a turnover policy, and also I think actually kind of speaking to what Jackie was talking about when retiring, just kind of getting a guide to all of the processes in our office to kind of have like a hard copy of how to do everything in case, you know, in case of emergency. Significant budget changes. There was just $500 increase to the treasurer's expense, and then we also created an account for the Ameriflex admin fees that had traditionally been taken straight out of the treasurer's expense, but we figured we would branch that out into its own account.
Just to clarify, you'll see that in the benefits section of the book.
Thank you. I was going to ask where it was, because
You're good.
it was not on the list here.
Quick on the draw there, Brian. That was the next question.
Anticipating our questions, I love it.
I think everything else is pretty much level funded, all the other accounts.
So I'll ask you that question since you're up here. The software, thoughts on whether that's something we should be looking at sooner than later?
It would be helpful. I know that for Springbrook, the reports section isn't always the most helpful. You have to kind of really be creative when you're trying to create certain reports. So that might be something that would be helpful to go ahead and look more into.
Something we want to have the treasurer and the accountant spend some time looking at what it would be and what the costs are, just to understand during the budget cycle before we make it, before we firm it up, and
We'd have to
then we
have
can
some
always
numbers. See what that
decide
looks
if
like.
it's something we include, you know, this year, next year, and the FinCom can see it, and we can all look at, if you work to put that together, that would be great, and then we'll at least have an idea if we're moving in that direction, some future date.
Okay, that sounds good.
I know there's always discussion back and forth on whether or not that's the right software.
Right.
So also, you know, if we're not sure that that is the right direction, then that's always an option too.
Okay, that sounds good.
Any questions or concerns? We can jump to the Ameriflex admin fees, but it seems pretty straightforward, so I don't think we need to go there right now.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Do you want to discuss benefits while Jennifer's here, just real quick?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we can jump there.
It's all the way to the back. I apologize. I will have divider tabs for you next week.
Oh, you mean like in the very back of the book?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just flipping to the end of the section thinking I was going to get there.
It's numbered section 8, but it's literally the last printed page in your book. Health insurance and employee benefits.
5 tabs up
Thank you.
at the bottom.
No, yeah.
So I think Jennifer did the best she can with the current information, but as you all recall, in January, we get firmer estimates from all of our different organizations about if they're changing any of our assessments. So I think these numbers are good numbers for right now. But in January, the two of us may come back to you and say, this has shifted and we need to file an amendment with you. But it's pretty straightforward at this point.
Yeah, we basically, for the health insurance, we level funded it because we didn't come close to what we had budgeted the previous year. So
Right.
I think that's, as of now, a good estimate.
Retirement jumped significantly last
Yes.
year, and that exceeded our initial projections. But a lot of that has to do with the actuaries' report to the retirement board. And they then go back and recalculate all of the member communities and their assessments. It also looks at our payroll, which our payroll had grown a few years ago, and so it takes a couple cycles to catch up.
So that request is slightly less than the expended in the current fiscal year? Is that what I'm reading?
So at this moment, this current year, we have expended $376,000.
Right, but that wasn't, the water wasn't taken out yet, remember?
We have to make an adjustment there, yes.
So the 375 request is in excess of what the actual
Not
finals?
as, yes, right. And
Correct.
that, the expended should be lower.
We're going to do an amendment.
Okay, understood.
The water department should have been assessed a portion of that, and that had not occurred.
Which would net that down?
Correct.
Understood. Okay. Do I recall a discussion about fixed cost on an insurance in the coming couple of years that you and I had? No? Okay.
No,
That look
sounds
says that was in my
fascinating.
head.
Dental is, yes, dental is a fixed. It
Is
went
that-
down, yes.
okay.
Dental is a fixed for 3 years, but,
Okay.
health
I thought I
insurance,
saw
yes.
something. Thank you.
You're
It was
welcome.
the news saw it.
Health
Okay.
insurance is every year, though.
Yeah, of course. And then we always talk about OPEB, but I think the last analysis said we might be getting closer to fully funded. but-
2025 will be fully funded, and then we can start to draw off that account, which is absolutely amazing. There's not many towns in the state that I can say that. 2025 will be fully funded. Yep.
What is the OPEB stand for? I know what it stands for.
Other
Other-
post,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
other post-employment benefits.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And I know we were talking about how soon, and that's not that far away.
No.
So we can use that money to pay for retiree insurance.
And when we do, we likely won't have to be putting in as much, maybe some to keep ahead of the curve, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we're in a really good position.
We could, I'm trying to remember what page it is in that report that we received, but there is a chart. It's a little complicated at first to look at it, but once you get the hang of reading it, it will show you what our projected deposit schedule is into the OPEB account, where we get to the FY 2025 fully funded, and it then projects what maybe you would need to put in going forward to keep it current. So maybe that chart would be useful for both committees to have.
Yeah, definitely, we can pass
Okay.
that on.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are we allowed to draw it ahead of time? Or are you not allowed to draw against it until it's fully funded? Or is that just a choice?
That's a good question. I will ask that and get back to you.
I'm sure it doesn't get asked often.
Yeah.
As Jennifer noted, most towns are trying to get there.
Right.
Right. Well, yeah, you said then we can start using it, and it kind of was like, just curious. Could we be using it? I mean, obviously, we're
I
not
just don't
fully
think it would
funded.
grow as
but
fast, right?
Yeah. Okay. Questions on benefits?
Nope.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe our tax collector will be dialing in remotely. I don't know if we have her on the line yet. Okay.
You're going high tech here?
FinCom, so tax collector will be joining remotely. She will be on the small screen. We'll get a big screen in the future, but so we'll try to be quiet and hopefully you can hear. But if you have any questions on what's said, please let us know and we can relay it once we get her on the line. And if she's not quite here yet, I don't think we can jump to personnel and come back.
Want to do that?
Yes, let's do that. I'm gonna get back from benefits here.
Well, so we addressed the personnel requests in the select board budget. So the next would be town clerk.
Oh, you're right. Thank you.
I should put that clear on the agenda.
Yeah, I was just following the agenda order
Sorry
and
about that.
jotting them off here. Mr. Newton, would you like to come on up? We'll cover the town's clerk's budget, and then we'll come back to tax collector after that.
How you guys doing?
Welcome.
Evening.
All right, surviving, I think.
So, floor is yours.
Well, I don't have an awful lot to say. I believe I submitted a report. I think it's all in there, so I was kind of expecting questions more than anything. I think I did note a couple of highlights, which was, the issues that we had with general code, trying to get everything all together for that and getting things caught up with that. And there's still a fair amount of stuff outstanding with that that I still have to get back before I can submit it to general code and they can move ahead and do their thing to try to get everything codified. So once that occurs, at this point, I don't see it being ready for the annual town meeting. There just won't be time enough for that. So whether it'll be a special town meeting or whatever you guys decide to, do with that, once it's all ready. But I do really hope earnestly that it'll be done, this upcoming fiscal year, And the other big thing for me was getting a new ballot box. The one that we currently have was purchased in 1996. Pretty long longevity for a computer system, They can no longer get parts for it. They're just not being manufactured. And I don't want to get caught short with something that breaks and they can't fix it. I mean, they have a small inventory of parts, and when somebody retires a machine, they scavenge off of that. But I think it's time for us to move ahead, and that money has already been approved at a prior town meeting. It's sitting there. I just now earnestly looking at it, and in fact, I have scheduled vendors to come in January to review them and decide how we'll move ahead, and then I'll be back because it actually has to be a vote of the Board of Selectmen to approve which ballot box so that I can notify Secretary of State and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the MGLs behind it that, push it along. I think those were the two biggest items, as I recall, what I wrote up for items. I think the other issue that you might notice in the submitted budget is it's different from last year in that last year we were asked to split out education funds, and I did that. I took it out, because it was everything in my general expense account, and so I split out the education funds, but that line item never got added for me. And it didn't hurt too bad this year because with my wife and everything, I didn't make the conferences anyway. But, I'm hoping this year going forward, I put it back in. And hopefully it'll get caught, and the account has now been created. We've talked with Deb, and the account's been created and everything. So that's looks like an increase, but it wasn't from the year before where I took the 6,500 and I split it up into expenses and education, and the only thing that came out was the expenses one. Elections next year, there will be a state primary. Don't know when the date is yet. Typically they're in September, but they keep talking about pushing it back to August. We'll see what happens. And of course the state general election in November, and then it'll be the town annual election. So there will be 3 elections in that fiscal year. So hence the change there, because it's the cost of the programming of all the devices that we have and everything. So I think those are kind of the highlights of everything that I have. The one other item is the software line item. I level funded that, knowing that there's a good possibility that we're going to be changing our software vendor. We are not particularly happy with our current software vendor in terms of the dog licensing and the cemetery deeds particularly, and then the tracking information that we have for elected and appointed officials. It's caused us some severe issues. And so we are looking for new software to replace that. And I do not know at this point who it will be. We haven't even had a vendor in yet. And I don't know what the costs will be, or maintenance software, ongoing maintenance costs or anything like that. But the cemetery software was so bad and so screwed up that I stopped using it, and I'm doing it by hand again. So I didn't want to do that with the doggy stuff. We were able to survive with that. But.
Thank you. I think that's hit all the items that you had in there. I didn't have any
Well, the question
specific
I was going to say
questions.
is, would you have a ballpark placeholder? But you answered that you're not sure.
Yeah, I'm just not sure at this point because we haven't even talked to vendors yet, so we just don't know. Yeah.
All right. Now, is that something you said you think you'll be able to have to be able to put into this fiscal year?
Well, I don't know how quickly we'll get it. So. And then get it installed and everything. I mean, I'm hoping that we can maybe do it during this fiscal year, but, it's not just my office, it crosses 2 or 3 different other offices. So, we all got to be together on it and work on it and see what's a good time to implement. Because, none of us have anything going on.
Dick, I know the codification process is going to be a process that's ongoing pretty much forever, but how far are we from seeing, are we 75% away from, or 80%?
Yeah, I would guess that we're probably, one of the biggest items that we're looking at that hasn't been totally updated yet and reviewed is the zoning bylaws. And, we're waiting for the planning board because there were many suggested changes that came back from general code on how to improve the wording, not really changing the intent, but just improving the wording, cleaning up a bunch of stuff and things like that. And so we're kind of waiting on that to happen. And I don't know, I think some of that has tentatively been scheduled, but I don't know how firm it is. But that's the biggest chunk. And I would say that's easily 25–30% of what the codification consists of is the zoning bylaw. There's a lot to it.
Other questions for the town clerk?
I just think if someone were to ask about this roughly $10,000 increase, would it be accurate to say that about 80% of it is related to elections? You have no choice, you have to do that.
That's correct, right. I think you can see, the elections are listed separately, right, yeah, and you see that, yeah, that's all election costs, and I think I included a copy of my calculations on that so that you could see exactly what I was doing and how it got to where it got. And every year it goes up and down, right, because some years I only run 1 election, some years I run 3, some years you gotta run 4. And there's no control, it's what we have to do. Yeah.
And I think, Dan, the bulk of the other increase is the line item that got dropped by mistake last year, so it's not maybe effectively an increase. It looks like it, but it was a
It looks like
a
it. I
drop
think it
from a
was
prior year.
$2,100.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have no problem with
Yeah.
it. I can confirm it's in there.
I see it. For now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Anything else from Mr. Newton? Okay.
Nope.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Excellent. We are ready? All right. We'll try to bring in our tax collector. Flip back to that section. Hi, Michelle. Can you see or hear
Hi.
us?
I can see you and hear you. Can you see and hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you for doing this.
So I'm just flipping back to the right page here. And if you want to just go real quick through changes and any highlights.
So I guess I must not think my office is very exciting because initially I thought there was nothing new and exciting going on in fiscal year 22 that I could even talk about. Pretty status quo. Things are just being maintained. I will say though that probably for everybody, I still feel like we're under the cloud of COVID and it's been a little bit challenging. I think we're trying to meet the needs of the public the best we can and we're open, partially, but it's kind of been a downer. So that would be a challenge to the position of tax collecting is that it's already kind of a downer. And then you add COVID. So anywho, yeah, so that's about that. And recently a challenge has been the delay in the tax rate setting and delaying the issuance of the bills. But a highlight of that is that our group of finance members will come together and talk about the different roles that we all play and the timeline that we have and options that we may have for the future.
That sounds good. And from what I see here, it's level funded. Other than that, it's just the standard wage change on the schedule, looks like.
Right.
Any questions for the tax collector?
I have none.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Michelle. I think we're good for now.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, next one is land use. And Brian, I'll let you sit in for land use.
So only one notable change in all of the land use boards is the request to increase the Conservation Commission budget. They are looking to increase their appropriation from 2,500 to 4,000. As you will see in their line items, there's several new line items that they are requesting. They're amongst themselves trying to figure out how they would like to request that you divvy the $4,000 up. But they've identified those 5 categories as things that they should budget for and maintain. So I should have an update from them at their January meeting about how they would like to break that out. The planning board chair informed me that he would just like to request level funding at this time, so that has been requested, and the ZBA has also requested level funding, and there's a little explanation from the ZBA in their submission.
Any questions specifically about Concom or in general? Obviously level funded, nothing too outstanding there.
No.
Okay. And then elected officials. which are,
It's a holdover, I think. You all changed your approach to elected officials a few years ago, and we embedded all of them into every respective department that they oversee. So we used to have a called out page on here that was just elected officials, and we only do that in the warrant now. But I kept everything as you're going through this book status quo to what you approved last year with your elected official compensation policy, where you set all of the rates and said that you'd revisit in 3 years. So I took that approach as I built the budget, and if the two boards have altered that, or you plan to revisit that, feel free to let me know. There's actually no page to that.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize.
I think
The chairman's following the agenda, which is a
I am.
reference.
Apologies to everyone. I think the point is we've embedded most of them in the departments that they are part of.
Correct.
That being said, I was going to tease you that the very first section is the moderator because, well, if anything, I guess you could consider him part of the administration. So
Right.
his, I guess I'll call it stipend salary, is on the first page of this section.
Correct.
Level funded. That being said, I have not heard anything, Brian, I don't know if you have, or FinCom, from any of the elected officials about any requests for us to revisit their specific wages before the 3-year mark that we talked about last cycle.
I have not received any requests.
I've heard nothing. So as a grouping, I guess those should generally be level funded unless they fit within the wage classification for the working positions, and then those are following the program.
Okay.
Okay. I think that wraps up section 2, right? Our initial
Almost.
batch. Did I leave something out?
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to stop
So,
following my own agenda
you're
because
good.
my agenda is
Building
missing
and
some
grounds will
stuff.
be covered next week with Public Works when Glenn joins us.
Correct.
The one thing that is left is miscellaneous, which is our insurance policy, your FERCOG assessment, and the Around Town newsletter. So that's page 2-17. As you all discussed the FY23 insurance commitment that you signed a few weeks ago, there are no planned rate increases. With that being said, when we add things to the policy, you add a vehicle, you remove a vehicle, we just added the brand new play structures at Park Street Park. When we make those changes, obviously our premium gets readjusted. And then they also take a look at, they call it the factor, but our claim history. And so as claims hit, it usually takes 2 cycles before they actually get worked into our premiums. So I have requested an increase for just our general liability insurance because those things are sometimes hard to predict. Also note if we do have a claim that we do support and say that we need to pay on something, the deductible also comes out of this line item. And so depending on what policy it is, there may be a deductible that we have to attribute there. So I did request a slight increase there. I also requested a slight increase for our police and fire injured on duty policy and a slight increase for our insurance bonds. At this moment, the FERCOG has not set their assessments. They will do that in January. I know that when I was sitting in the last finance committee meeting, they were trying to avoid increases like they did last year, but they haven't settled on that yet. So I have a slight increase there. It's not much, it's $79, but I will know better in January. And at this point, the Around Town did not request an increase in the advertising costs. So I level funded that request.
Making it work.
Thank you.
That's the insurance I was referring to. Totally different insurance.
Got it.
Level funded.
Yes.
When I had said there was no increases, this is what I was talking about.
Got it.
I got
yes.
them mixed up. Thank you.
That's okay.
Any questions on the increases or anything on the miscellaneous?
No, sir.
No, I have none.
Okay. Thank you. Now there's truly no pages left in section
You're done.
2.
Now you're done.
Does the FinCom have anything else for us tonight?
I'd only like to say thank you all, the administrator in particular, for putting this together in such a smooth easily understandable talk. It is a work in progress, won't be done for months, completed, but this is a pleasure to participate in a orderly process, so thank you. It's recognized, I appreciate it.
We were just, Brian and I were just reflecting on how far we've come in the last, 5 years in this process, and with capital planning, with all the different components that are part of it now, the transparency, the level of detail. But there is a lot of work that goes behind it, and so one of these days I do think we all should the team come up with a piece of software that meets kind of or aligns well with what we're trying to do to alleviate a lot of the man hours that go behind this. I think we should all consider that. Should that opportunity, should we find a package that meets the need, consider that cost as potentially a good cost of doing business as opposed to the hours spent today. So I don't think we have a solution, but at some point, before 5 more years goes by, hopefully we will. Looking at the budget calendar, looks like capital improvement requests are due, next week? This week. This week. What week is it?
Yes, they are due this
3
Thursday.
days. Okay, and then,
Getting some?
Most of your department heads have already submitted them. I'm waiting on just a handful, so I will. Like you got a lot of requests to dig through.
I think there's a few bridges in there.
And they all come with supporting documentation. So I will be putting those packets together and sending them out to the Capital Planning Committee next week. And then I just need to know when you all would like to meet.
And then the next currently scheduled board meeting and joint meeting will be Monday, January 3rd.
Yep.
That's not recognized
January 3rd.
as the holiday?
Don't believe so.
That's right. January 3rd that's that Monday.
Right, but what day is New Year's
Correct,
Day?
but, I'm sorry.
Saturday the 1st, so the holidays.
Is recognized on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense in a fiscal year that is not a calendar year. In a calendar year, you can't recognize a holiday in the year it didn't happen in. Sorry, mixing public-private here. No, I just went through this at my private work, that they cannot recognize it on Friday even though it's a Saturday holiday because that's not in the year that the holiday is given and paid.
That makes sense.
So, anyway,
That makes sense.
I digress. Thank you for for that. So we are meeting on Monday, January 3rd, and we will be here 7 o'clock. Public Safety and Public Works, including Building and Grounds Maintenance. And I think that's a wrap on the budget. All right, nothing further. I'll make a motion to adjourn the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and continue the Select Board meeting.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, let me regroup to where we were. All right. So I'm going to jump to a couple things, see if we can't get Superintendent McCrory on his way this evening. Let's go to the next item on the agenda, which was review of the Building and Ground Maintenance Position Screening Committee recommendation. Sir, I hear you are here on behalf of that committee.
I am, thank you.
You can come on up. We made a special table just for you.
Because I turned all my paperwork in, so I don't have it.
That's okay. We have a highlight memo we can refer to. So it looks like there were 4 applicants who met the
Yes,
deadline?
we had 4 applicants that we reviewed, and after consideration, after all the applicants and the interviews, one did stand out, interviewed very well, has a lot of what we're looking for, a lot of experience, a lot of confidence, and overall, I believe he's going to be a good fit.
And I gather the committee didn't present any other candidates. I gather they
That's
did
correct.
not feel that any of the rest really
No, sir.
met the bar.
Correct.
We have the application here and the recommendation from the screening committee. From the chair of the screening committee. Any questions, concerns, thoughts?
Starting date, time?
He asked what we required for a starting date. You know, we told him to give his current employer, you know, the 2 weeks or whatever he felt was comfortable. He was happy with the 2 weeks. To get into AEIOU for a pre-employment drug screen and physical could probably take 2 weeks. So I would think we'd be somewhere around the first week of the new year with the holidays.
I noticed in his job application, seemed to be looking for a salary range around 40,000, 30 to 40,000.
36 to 40, I believe is what it is, yes.
And he's fine with the starting salary that would be offered?
So we gave him the range, and what we presented for the starting is kind of in the middle of what he was asking for,
Okay.
which was at the level, step 3, I believe, of the grade.
Okay.
And that recommendation was based on the experience level?
Correct.
To start at the
Yes.
step 3?
Yeah, the 1795 puts him a little over 37, so it's a little higher than his base range that he had asked for.
Correct.
Yep. I gather from the direction of the discussion, no concerns
I have no
with the recommendation, and no need to do a further interview with the board at this point.
No, if they're comfortable with the applicant that came forward, I say we move forward with it.
Brian, based on, and Glenn, based on the timing, the holidays, everything else, should we maybe target Monday, January 10th or sooner? And then if things are wrapped up and he's ready, that's fine, and if not, give substantial, reasonable time with the holidays and everything else to get everything done?
I think that's good.
Okay. And then, assuming accepted, gets on board, et cetera, then there's the transition plan, right, for the current building and ground maintenance
Yeah, and I think it's
staff
just
to
going to
move
be
over
just to get familiar with the buildings themselves. I think it's something he's going to come up with his own routine to what fits the both openings and closings of the buildings. I don't think that's going to be very hard for him.
Are you envisioning a few week overlap or?
Maybe a
something?
couple weeks.
Yeah, okay.
A couple of weeks or maybe a couple of weeks? I only say
do you
that.
have it yet?
Only say that
within a couple
because there's
weeks.
a person waiting to go into the position that she applied for and was
That's
accepted
correct.
in, so.
And we have another person that could help train also. If that person needs to cross over to the position she's going to, we have another person that could train also.
Okay.
I think we'd just like to, and Bill, maybe I think what you were alluding to, just firm that up and give the current employee a plan, right, what that
Right.
is. So if,
Right.
once we get through these steps, persons passes all of their, assuming they accept and pass all of their pre-employment and we have a firm start date, what does that transition plan look like? Just firming up something and giving them a firm?
Yeah, I'll work with the
Picture.
department head and the employee.
Excellent. I personally am not defining what that
Thank
needs
you.
to be. I think, are you getting at?
No,
We need
that's
to
what I
have
was getting
a
at,
definition to it, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
what I was alluding to too, so, thank you. Would one of you like to make a motion? I think we have.
Take a shot at it. Oh, go ahead.
I make a motion to appoint David Lambert to the Building and Grounds Maintenance position at a starting pay rate of grade B, step
3?
3, with a 3-month probationary period pending a pre-employment background check and medical screening, and with a start date on or before January 10th.
I'll second that. That captured everything you needed?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Hopefully by the time we meet again, we'll be on board, or nearly.
Absolutely.
Brian, just for clarity, the probationary period is for benefits, correct?
Correct. It does also have a recommendation from the department head to you all about retention as an employee, so there's still that follow-up portion. But it predominantly has an impact on benefit use, correct?
Just from some prior discussions, are we, and I know it's position specific, but are we supposed to have at will in that?
We typically include the phrase at will.
So I'll make a motion to amend the last motion to add on to the end at will.
I'll second it.
Trying to figure out where to put it.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
always awkward.
Well, yeah, so that's why I was asking about the probationary
It
period. because
triggered that thought.
all employees are at will unless they're
Contractual.
under contractually obligated,
Right.
so,
But that formalizes kind of the discussion with the department head at 3 months as well,
correct.
about where are we and are we progressing the way we need to be.
Okay.
All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 Thank you. When you said
Thank
it,
you, John.
Yeah,
that thought for me as well, like
I wish
there's
I had
something
had a
missing.
thought before we finalized the vote, but
It's okay.
at least we got
I
there.
wish I caught it before I sent you the materials.
It all happens so
Can you
quickly
send me his
sometimes.
phone numbers?
Yes, sir.
So you have it, I'll give him a call in the morning.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. I'll jump to the last item here. Issuance of notice of layout pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 82, for Care Drive, Highland Ave, Pleasant Street, and Public Works Boulevard.
Okay. I think we are almost ready.
Just in case there's any questions for the superintendent while he's here.
I'm getting used to this side screen thing.
We'll get it on a stand so it's easier for you here eventually.
Okay, so in your packets, there should be, at the last page, I believe, a draft of the notice, as well as some information about the anticipated time schedule for all of this. See if I can get this to move.
Looks like you're showing something around a 60-day process.
Takes about that. So you all have done the initial work of giving us your general feedback. We incorporated all of that into the layouts that were then presented to the planning board for an A&R process that has been completed on 3 of the 4 layouts. The 4th one is occurring this week. Once we finally are ready to do the remainder of the process, the statute, Chapter 82, requires you all to give formal notice to any of the abutters, and especially anybody that we may be taking land from. As you recall, in this situation, on 2 of the layouts, you're using land that you already control for Care Drive and Public Works Boulevard. Pleasant Street is not taking any land. It's using existing layout. We're just reaffirming those boundaries. So the one layout that does include a taking is Highland Avenue, and that's that 247 square feet at the top. So we have already put together the abutters list for this, so when the 3 of you finally issue notice, we will begin that process. I need you to set a hearing date, so I'm suggesting to you maybe January 3rd, but obviously it's a date that the 3 of you decide on. And then folks can choose to attend that and give any commentary or feedback. We would make sure it was clear in the notice that at the conclusion of that hearing, the 3 of you may choose to lay out the roads. If you do that, the next step would be to record it at the town clerk's office, and then we need to schedule the town meeting. You saw a draft of your STM warrant that includes a layout of each of these roads. Assuming the voters give us the authorization, We would record that vote certificate along with the actions that you've taken and all the other approvals that have happened along the way, and we'd record that at the registry. We would finalize the taking for that one piece of land and complete the legal process.
So the key dates here are for the board to officially issue notice, hold a public hearing, set that date.
Correct.
After that, it's just pending a town meeting to have authorization to adopt said changes.
Correct.
And then they're in effect,
Correct.
after probably a waiting period to record.
We have to do it within a 120-day window after the town meeting votes. So I don't know of any reason to not get it all done in February and just make sure that we've completed this process. The only time that I could see where maybe you need the full 120 days is if there was some type of legal challenge. But at this point, again, there's only one property that you have a taking on, and it's a friendly taking because he brought the proposal to the three of you.
Right.
Right. Any questions, concerns? We ready to proceed?
I have no concerns.
Okay.
There's recommended language in there.
Yeah, are we good with the timeline of having the public hearing on January 3rd?
Yes.
And I would propose we do it close to the start of the meeting since we have a joint budget at 7,
Right.
so maybe at like 6:35
Right.
as a close to first order of business.
That works.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion for the select board to issue written notice of intent to lay out, alter, or relocate the public ways of Care Drive, Highland Ave, Pleasant Street, and Public Works Boulevard in accordance with MGL Chapter 82, Section 22, and set a public hearing date for January 3rd, 2022 at 6:35 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will finalize that notice, and it will be in your office for signature tomorrow. And then once they're signed, we will get them out and served.
Is there a minimum number of days prior to the hearing? Is it
7 days.
7?
So the nice thing about you all having 3
We have
weeks,
time.
we have time.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's right there on the page in front of me, 7 days.
Thank you all.
I'm realizing we should have reviewed the draft of the special town meeting while the FinCom was still here,
I didn't catch that either.
but
January 3rd?
It's gonna have to be.
yeah, I'm gonna say we'll pass over that and move it there. There was only one change of substance.
You all had requested that I put a little more explanation into the mosquito control district, so there's a clarification there, and you asked me to put the dollar amount that we need to appropriate for that purpose. So I did put the $5,000 in there. I believe there's one other minor change.
Are we? I guess
Oh, and
we will review the draft special town meeting warrant since we're talking about it and not
Yeah.
moving past it. Go ahead, Brian. You were going to mention a
so it
second.
was the mosquito control district, and then the other article that you asked me to add was an article to transfer the remaining balance of the photovoltaic array account
Yes.
and put it back into stabilization. So there's an article that articulates that.
And then do we expect to include Poplar Mountain?
I believe he's still out surveying. Is that the reports that you're all getting to? So I think he's still working on that. So I
Okay.
don't believe it's going to be ready.
He was out again last week.
Is that going to go through the same Chapter 82 process? Or are we just taking it over from,
It will go
The
through the same
district.
process.
okay,
So to let you know where we are with that, yes, the local process will be this exact same process that you're doing right now. You will have a formal layout, you will give notice, you will schedule a public hearing, and then you will have a town meeting. The step before that, because it's a county layout, is that we are petitioning the executive council. I believe they have a scheduled this week to discuss it, and then they're going to have their public hearing in January. So they are going to hopefully vote to authorize the discontinuance of that as a county road on the condition that the voters of Irving agree to adopt it. So it won't completely discontinue, it will be a conditional vote.
okay.
So I don't think we are off in terms of a timeline, if this is held to your annual town meeting, I think that will
Yeah,
be
I was gonna
okay.
say, just move it to annual.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on the STM? Well, I'm guessing at this point, depending on how far we delay how far out we post the date of the STM, we may not have public comment on that. We may have that likely on the annual. Right. Things probably will not be done in time. Anything else on the STM?
Nothing.
I have nothing.
I've sent the draft to council, town clerk, and all the other offices that typically just review and weigh in just to make sure that anything that's particular to their field has been addressed. So I should have that feedback for you for January 3rd.
Excellent. All right, continuing from the top, what we moved past, review the former International Paper Mill RFP draft. Not looking to make any decisions tonight. Obviously, there's still a lot there and work to be done, but just wanted to circle back after our discussion last meeting. Any thoughts, questions, input, anything from the team, Brian, Mariah, that we want to visit while we're here tonight? If you don't have anything to add, regardless of what the superintendent said, you don't have to come up here.
I don't have anything to add other than what Brian and I submitted in the draft RFP.
Okay.
The rubric is under construction still.
Right. I know that was a focus of the discussion last meeting.
We did do a lot of updating. I forget what section it was, but we had borrowed language from the previous RFP we had done for senior housing. And so there was just a lot of tweaking of language to make sure that it is not as specific to a residential use. And I think there's still a little bit more tweaking that needs to be put into that. So if anyone notices anything that is missing or needs to be changed, we definitely welcome the notice there. It's a lot of words.
There's a lot of content.
I was comfortable with the change. I thought it gave those folks who are looking at the RFP the ability to make choices and decisions that they were comfortable with in bidding on this in this bidding process. So I thought the language worked well.
Okay.
At least for me it did. So.
Thank you.
Any changes or anything else to add at this point?
No, I haven't had time. I want to look through the rubric a little bit more. I didn't have time this weekend to really dive into it and look at it, but I know that's the biggest component is can we craft a rubric that, will address the concerns we had about making sure it's a level playing field regardless of what type of development proposal comes forward. So
Balanced, yeah.
I'll be honest with getting ready for the budgets. We didn't have a big chance to go through that, but my hope is that tomorrow and Wednesday to focus more on that. We were sent 2 examples, and then we also have the rubric that we used that we're using for the former graded school. And so my hope is to go through those 3 and pull the best of those. And when I have that, I can resend it out to you all so that you can look at that too.
Excellent. Great. Well, obviously with budget season, it makes it harder, but we have some time in between so we can all look at this more thoroughly and provide some feedback so we can keep it moving at the same time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll pass over meeting minutes for tonight. Review of proposed contract extensions for Aqualine Utility and Balthazar. Section 10. Oh, and A. Martins and Sons. Oh, yeah. I just stopped at the end of that line. Balthazar Contractors, Inc. and A. Martins and Sons Construction, Inc. Thank you. So I assume as the season came to an end, we are not quite wrapped up and there's some punch list stuff on all of these contracts. So you're
Correct.
looking for us to formally extend them into early next year to allow them to come back and complete any outstanding work.
You summarized that perfectly. That's exactly what I'm looking to have done. You have reached substantial completion on at least 2 of the projects. So Flag Hill Road Sewer is substantially complete, and the Arch Street for sewer main is substantially complete. IP Mill is in need of the pumps and all the mechanics that will go into the pump station, and that is on delay. And then the A. Martin and Sons has made a fair amount of progress. We were not able to finish one side of Pratt Street, so that will have to be done in the spring. All the seeding and loaming needs to be done, and there's some road reconstruction that needs to be done on Central Street. So there's a larger to-do list, so we can't quite say substantially complete, but they've at least closed up all of the open areas to get us through the winter.
Any questions or concerns with any of those projects continuing?
I have none.
So in your packet, there should be a memo with some recommended vote language, I believe. And
And before we extend, we moved past it, but you have mention of the change order for Arch Street. Moved past it earlier, but it's in your proposed language here. Do you want us to consider the change order number 2 or not?
that is, yes, so they,
The way they.
Sorry, at the beginning of the evening, I had moved past it.
yes, well,
We can revisit.
so the change order is the extensions. These are all
They're considered
extensions.
change orders.
Yeah, the engineers proposed them to you. I should have been clear, I'm so sorry. They have proposed each of the contract extensions as change orders.
Oh,
And they're following your numbering scheme if you issued earlier ones. So
understood.
for Aqualine, you've only done 1. For A. Martin and Sons, you've done 4. So I apologize.
No, I was quickly reading the value table and I misread the previously approved change order dollars as a current, and I went,
Yes,
where's the dollars for the change order? I follow now.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Engineers, very formal, very accurate.
Yes.
So are we looking at change order number 2?
For Aqualine,
Aqua?
correct.
Yep.
I make a motion to approve change order number 2 to amend the final completion date of the contract with Aqualine Utility Incorporated to May 30th, 2022, and to authorize Brian Smith, Town Administrator, to execute the agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll swap off with you there.
Okay.
I'll give you a break. For the IP Mill, I'll make a motion to approve change order number 2 to amend the contract with Balthazar Contractors Incorporated and set a substantial completion date of April 30th, 2022, and a final completion date of May 30th, 2022, and to authorize Brian Smith, Town Administrator, to execute the agreement.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll take Flag Hill. I'll make a motion to approve change order number 1 to amend the contract with Balthazar Contractors, Inc. and set a final completion date of May 30th, 2022, and to authorize Brian Smith, Town Administrator, to execute the agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I will take on the A. Martins. Make a motion to approve change order number 5 to amend the contract with A. Martin and Sons Construction Incorporated and to set a final completion date of May 31st, 2022, and to authorize Brian Smith, Town Administrator, to execute the agreement.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen. I'll get those issued tomorrow.
Okay, nearing the bottom of the list here. Discussion regarding joining the Massachusetts opioid settlements.
I have no concern.
There's a lot of information to review.
There is. I don't have any concerns, but it's not necessarily clear to me, and maybe I didn't get through it, on if we're part of it, what is the expectation? What do we, assuming there's a settlement and funds that come to the town of Irving, what is the responsibility or expectation that we do with those? And are we positioned to be able to, potentially? And I'm not saying that that's even in there. I just didn't.
Right.
Yeah, so-
I didn't get it. If either of you did.
No, I didn't, and I think along the same lines, what I read was there was a lot of desire for all municipalities to sign up for it. It bolsters the status of the claim and to get the funds coming in. But I didn't see anything in there about next steps and what that means,
Right.
or what that requires of the town at all. And I read somewhere, I'm not sure if it was within this paperwork, that there could be an expectation of the funds could be very small when you break it down with all of the communities involved. I think there's 102 or something like that involved in it. So I'm not sure what the percentage is. I didn't run through the entire list of every town with the 0.02% and the breakdowns of
Right.
payouts. My assumption would be that if awarded any funds, it would be used in some sort of training and some sort of, advocacy role of substance use or, abuse. Maybe something with the community center, senior center, fire department, police department, embedded somewhere in there. But nothing's been said, unless you have additional.
I figured the three of you would have that question, so I've already asked the Attorney General's office to provide us with examples of what would be an acceptable use of those funds. I just haven't received the response yet. I do believe that, to your point, that those are likely the categories and that there's some local discretion that they want you to have to understand how the opioid crisis has impacted every community slightly differently, and you may have a unique need in every community, so I think they do anticipate some flexibility. But I share that question. If we have this coming in, it needs to be appropriated. It looks like every year, so there should be some type of programmatic component that we can budget for. I just don't have it today. So with that being said, I can get that information for your next meeting, but they're looking for you to sign on this month if you're interested.
I agree with you, and I think, I wouldn't speculate, but I think the math is in the sub 10,000, hundreds to 1,000 or so. It's not going to be
won't be
some huge
substantial.
pool of money we have to figure out what to do with. Hopefully, if it's something that requires a level of programming that we don't have or have an ability we can pool with other towns in the county maybe in the effort. So I guess the question is, are we good signing on? And I think you started with no concerns,
I
right?
said I.
Yeah, based on what I read, I have no concerns with signing on, even with the uncertainty of the use of it and the implementation of it. I still don't have any concerns at this point. We can roll with that when it comes out.
Okay. Do you need a motion from us, Brian?
Yeah, let me just, because I will get both of them ready, but there's two settlements. So I think we need a vote.
So
Right.
one of them is the J&J.
There's one to join for the J&J. And then there's another one. Let's see. Oh, one was for J&J and the other one's for the distributor. So there's the J&J settlement and the distributor settlement. So it'd be,
Oh, I got it. Okay, so you need a motion to join the statewide settlement for the 3 opioid distributors? Cardinal, McKesson, and Amerisource, and then Bergen, and then also to join the opioid maker Johnson & Johnson.
Right.
Sounds like you're on
It
that.
sounds like I made a motion. I'll make a motion the town of Irving join the statewide settlement with the 3 opioid distributors, Cardinal, McKesson, and Amerisource Bergen, and the settlement with opioid maker Johnson & Johnson.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will have that in your box for your signature.
Discussion regarding memorial plaque request for the French King Bridge. Mariah, come on up. First, thank you for your work on this.
You're welcome. So I included, or Brian included in your packet, a draft letter that outlines Ms. Hamill requested that MassDOT install a memorial to acknowledge lives lost at the bridge, families who were left grieving, and the first responders who have provided assistance over the years. Working with her and hearing feedback from several other families that were affected by loss at the bridge, I drafted some language that I included in the letter. We spoke with folks, our counterparts in Gill. They are amenable to having the plaque placed on our side of the bridge. We all think that it's appropriate to have it near the Silvio Oconti Memorial. And I believe that Brian had spoken with Glenn, and we need to replace our bench on that side of the bridge as well. So there'll be a few improvements that are made on our side as well as when the barriers are installed on the bridge. One family member did request that we just don't install the plaque until the barriers are put up, which I think is a thoughtful request. Yeah, and so this letter would go to MassDOT. Gill has already sent their version of a letter requesting this. They did suggest one tweak in the grammar, which I appreciated. So the final language would read, "In memory of the lives lost at the French King Bridge, in support of the families who grieve near and far, in gratitude to the first responders who offer help to those in need," and then 2022. Brian and I thought it would be appropriate to have some kind of a ceremony at the end of the installation of the barriers and the installation of the plaque. Ms. Hamill thought that that was a kind gesture and appreciated that. And hearing back from several other families affected, they also appreciated it. One or two said that they probably would not be in attendance, but thought that it was appropriate that people grieve in different ways.
So the language you just stated that would be on the plaque, is that going to include each individual's name as
No, sir.
was requested?
No, sir. Not
Okay.
currently.
Okay.
Our thought behind that is there are people we don't know if they lost their life
Right.
at the bridge.
Right.
I think that it could cause heartache to include or not include some people. I think it's, in my opinion, better to keep it all encompassing.
I get where you're going with that, Bill. It's hard to, it's presumptive in some cases. We
Yeah.
presume
Yeah.
the outcome, but don't know it.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't really think Mass DOT would go for that anyways, but
Yeah.
I don't have any concerns, and
have no
obviously, I
concerns,
think we all
yeah.
support it. We've been, to varying degrees, working on this for many, many years, so.
Yeah, I do appreciate, so when I first saw the article in the newspaper about it, there was no language for me to read and sort of digest. And, social media is a fantastic tool and a beast all at the same time. So I didn't really put a lot of, I didn't put a lot of stock in the feedback on that until I got to read the language. And once I got to read it, it's very general. It includes the first responders. It's an all-encompassing thing. And one thing you mentioned that I, would that solidified it for me is that it doesn't go in prior to the modifications that we've been asking for years. The barriers and any updates that we can do to make that bridge a safer place for, people to view it, people to be there, our first responders that have to be there on every call, if we can drop those numbers. So having that included and having the time frame of putting it up after, I have no issues with moving forward with it.
Agreed.
Glenn has offered a boulder that we could install a plaque on. We've done that before in some of our parks where we commission a plaque and then it's installed on a boulder that we offer.
And we need to send this letter in, and you said Gil already has?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Are we going to cover the expense totally ourselves, or are we splitting this with Gil?
My understanding is, so far, is that MassDOT would be including it as part of their project budget.
Okay.
I haven't heard otherwise.
Yeah, my assumption was that they would be paying for it. They just don't want to do it if both communities weren't on board with
Absolutely.
getting behind it. They wanted our approval to say, we recommend it, and then they can add it in.
Yeah, and they weren't comfortable writing the language, understandably so.
Just one additional note, we already provide maintenance support to the Silvio Conti Memorial. So we will extend, we don't know the exact placement of this, but we will include that with our maintenance activities there, which was part of our reason for recommending the Irving side, because we're already there doing that work.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we submit the letter of support for a plaque recognizing lives lost, the families, and the first responders with the Bridge Barrier Project to Mass DOT District 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do think some sort of ceremony when that time comes makes sense, so we'll, as we get closer to that timeline, we can plan something for those who wish to attend. Discussion regarding Amoresco request for alternative on-bill credit agreement and professional owners agent services through Beacon Integrated Solutions. So this discussion's been going on for a little while, and Brian and I have been replying to some degree and doing some research on this. So this relates to the French King Solar Project, Amoresco there, and they had some challenges with the property and the interconnect, I guess, and such. And during that, one thing that they were looking at was whether or not the town of Irving would consider alternative energy bill credits that were directed to the town and our electric usage, which would be financially beneficial to them. And I think part of the proposal is potentially some monetary savings, but also, pursuant to our green energy goals and things to tie in with that. The initial response that I provided them was that while we may consider it, we weren't necessarily in a position to do that at this time. We have a lot of projects going on. We have also had some occasional discussions with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee about whether or not we should consider, Irving Light and Power. Should we look at renewable energy installations of our own on some of our properties? I know, the decommissioned dump always comes up as a potential site of a solar array someday. And if that is, would that be municipally operated? And, how does that fit into our green energy goals, the site, things like that. All these different areas that we have discussed anecdotally over the years would lend to not wanting necessarily to tie into a 10 or 20-year agreement, which is likely what they'd be looking for.
Right.
They want something that ties with the time of their contract right now on that site. So I kind of gave him that initial feedback that probably we were not in a position to answer in a timeline that met theirs. They have frankly pushed that they really want us to consider it. So I said I'd bring it to the board, and they have offered to pay the consultant that we've used in the past on solar arrays to provide a professional opinion, right, on what that would look like. Is that about what they're, and it would be at their cost if we would be willing to look at it. So I bring that to both of you to consider whether we'd want that. Obviously, there'd be no obligation even if they did do that work and have a consultant bring us a proposal. It would just be whether or not we felt like it lended itself to further consideration or not at that time. So that's my summary, Brian. If you have anything to add from your conversations with them.
Just to build off of what you just said, if you were interested in hearing from a consultant, it would be your consultant. So this would be a contract that we would have with them, and you have an example of that professional service agreement in there. And we've worked with Beacon Integrated on prior matters. Any work to review the proposal and to negotiate on the town's behalf would be done between us and the consultant to Amoresco. So Amoresco would be reimbursing the town the cost. So there would be no direct financial relationship between the consultant and Amoresco. And then the only other thing that I would add is that I did raise the concern when we responded back about the town may have future energy production interests in green technology, and we wouldn't want to prematurely agree to an arrangement that would prevent that. I have to admit that a lot of what this is referring to is above my understanding, so I think it's wise, if you are even interested in entertaining this, to get a consultant who does this day in, day out. But I have been reasonably assured by our consultant that this would not preclude you from pursuing something else. But again, the exact mechanics of how that all works and what it does lock you into and what it doesn't is something I think I would want her professional opinion to respond to in writing, so that you can review that and understand it yourself, or even ask her questions directly. My layperson understanding of what this is simply a credit that you're going to get applied to any of the accounts in the agreement per kilowatt hour used. To the chairman's point, the benefit back to the producing company, Amoresco, would be a change in the rate that they secure for producing energy. If they can note that a certain portion of the energy produced is going to a municipality. So they wouldn't just probably use Irving, they would likely use other municipalities to try to maximize that credit, that benefit. So there's a financial incentive to the producer. The towns, in theory, also get a benefit by having a credit applied to their bill.
And to Brian's point, it's complex. So initially, I felt like our bandwidth is pretty thin right now already to take on anything else. So I was reluctant. If they're funding a professional to work on our behalf to make it clearer, I don't know if there's any harm in it. I still don't know if we have an appetite to move down this road at the pace that they would want. I'm not saying this is a solution that we wouldn't like or wouldn't want to do long term. Maybe it is, but that's my personal thoughts.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
I can tell you, looking at the paperwork that was sent, it was far more than I could digest in a 2-day period, having not seen it before, not read through it.
Right.
I don't have a solid enough grasp on it to say one way or the other this evening whether or not we should move forward with something like that.
Sure.
But I would agree that if there's, at no cost to the town, the ability to have professional opinion given to us, I'd entertain that as another piece of the documentation to look at and compare, and then maybe revisit this, at a future time. But I'm in no position right now to jump on board and say, yes, let's expedite this and sign a multi-year contract. So that's
Right.
I agree with Scott. I read as much as I could of it and skimmed a lot of it and came away feeling this is a lot of information, and I'm just not ready to make a decision on it. But again, if something's being offered that's not going to cost us any time or any money that we can gain some use from, acceptable to that. But the rest of it, I have a question mark on.
Brian, I'll ask you this. It's one thing that they're paying a consultant on our, that works on our behalf. But that doesn't mean there's no administrative time from our office to
Agreed.
assist in that process. It doesn't sound like it's a lot because I have a feeling it's mostly bill evaluation and the rest of it's understanding this. And as solar users, we both in different ways know the mass programs are complex for a private citizen. Forget what they are for a commercial entity and a generation array. So maybe that's not a lot of town staff involvement initially. To what degree would this, and I hesitate to say this because I know we're not there, but be able to maybe advise on what alternative options a town could pursue on their own that this would restrict us from? Meaning, we hire this consultant to do this analysis and provide us with what's the value of potentially signing on.
Mm-hmm.
On the con side, what does that prevent us from doing on our own, like a solar, our own generation array, on property we have, or other things, right? We have solar on municipal buildings currently. We're considering possibly adding municipal buildings, and if we consider putting solar arrays on them, does this lock us into what we can and cannot do? Right. And all those other implications, I don't know if that's provided in this scope of work or can be. And
Let's
so
require it.
I guess it's a question, I understand, but is that something that Beacon would provide?
Yeah.
In that, so,
Yes.
okay. You think that's within her
I
scope?
can lean on my past experience having worked with Ms. Greenblatt. She's very much interested in making sure that her clients, the towns, have the full understanding of what they're engaging themselves in before they are advised to proceed. Or she made it very clear to me that she wasn't, going to encourage you to move forward with something that's not in your best interest on behalf of you and the voters. But if there was additional contextual information that you need to be able to make a decision one way or the other, that she would either provide it or sort of direct us in the path that we would need to go to get that information. So though I've had this verbal conversation with her, I can easily work into the scope, the list of questions that we need asked, and to ensure that you have a better understanding of those exact issues. And again, if she's not the person to specifically answer them directly, she can point us in the direction of the people who could answer that question for us.
I've seen this a few more times than both of you probably, or at least some of the background prior, not the Beacon piece, but even I'm not there yet either. So I'm thinking we should carry it to next meeting, a little longer to digest it.
Yeah.
Maybe get a little more feedback from Beacon on expanding that scope to really understand the risks and cons to the town beyond just the bill credit, and then revisit. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Let's do that.
I will follow up with Ms. Greenblatt.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. So 2 other items not on the agenda, somewhat late breaking, just FYIs really. The library director search was failed by the library trustees after their last round of interviews. So they'll be restarting that. They did decide to appoint a screening committee for the next round instead of the process they've been using. So they will have a pre-screening committee like we would normally do in ours hiring.
Wait,
And-
was it failed by them or was it?
By the trustees, yes.
Do they have a solid reason why it was failed? Do they understand why it was failed?
I don't have that kind of information to answer that. I don't know that Brian does either. You know, I just you know, high level update on where they're at, and we can get more information on maybe what the challenges were that they, or if it was a qualification issue, or, you know, I'm not sure what they encountered that brought them to that decision. But they will, I know there was some feedback from applicants about concern about the lack of a screening process, which we normally have. And so it sounds like maybe that they took that into consideration, and maybe that will change the pool they have in the future. And I think the goal would be to put that out for sometime later in January, obviously with the holidays and everything, to start over.
There's no liability involved in this, or any possibility of someone feeling wronged, or?
I think, and I don't know, obviously not being involved in it, but I believe any applicant has the opportunity to reapply in the next round, right?
Okay.
Or in the next iteration, I guess, of it, since they did not move forward with anyone. No one's excluded, right, in that, so anyone could come back to the table.
Right. And just to add, because I was at the last meeting, it was based on qualifications. They just felt at the conclusion of the review of materials and the interview that the applicants hadn't risen to the requirements that they were looking for in the director's position. So.
And then second, we have a letter of resignation from one of our officers, effective Christmas Day.
Last shift on the 24th.
Yeah, yep. So we will look also in January to begin going out for hiring another officer to replace that officer. So looks like she has an opportunity in another town. So wish her the best, and we'll begin that process with Chief in the new year to replace that position.
Is there anything else, Chief, that you can add to that?
No, sir.
Town?
I'm sorry.
What town is?
I can say, right?
Yeah.
Boxborough,
Oh,
out by the Concord Rotary.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
She's originally from out east.
yeah.
Doesn't come as a big surprise.
A little closer to her roots, maybe. I'm sorry, a little closer to her roots.
Yeah.
Yep. Understood.
So, wish her the best.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So just an update, yeah, so you all know. And I think that was it. Okay.
That was it.
So we do have executive session. So with that, I'll make a motion that we move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3.
Sorry, it's on the
I feel
back side
like
of the
I'm
agenda.
missing, thank you, I'm like, there's more to that. Thank you, sir. To discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, which I do declare, New England Police Benevolent Association. The board will not return to regular session. This is a roll call vote. I'm going to call your name.
Just in a second first.
Second.
Thank you. Now roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote. When I call your name, please confirm by saying aye or nay. Scott Bassrash,
Aye.
William Bembry,
I
Jacob Smith, aye. Thank you all. Good evening.